What's up, guys? In this one, we are going to try and recreate the Super Saws from The Seconds by Porter Robinson. This is an all-time favorite Porter song of mine. So the section that we are going to look over is this. And where I am right now is like this. Yeah, so pretty close, I think. This song is off the Spitfire EP. So very old school Porter, back when he was in his electro house days. So I broke this out into three patches. We have the main super saw, the higher octave, and then this mid line that I thought I heard in the original. So we'll start with the super saw. So the notes for this are right here. These are the bass notes, and I copied them over 3 octaves. And then the higher notes are right here. This is the main melody line. And then we have this D note that's repeating over the course of it. So I will take off all of the processing that we have and we can go one by one. Okay, so with just the saw, this is what it sounds like. So the first thing that I did is I added some release to the envelope 1. I started at 342 for the first notes, and then with this larger gap here, I increased it to about 551. And that's just so some of the sound would linger on in between those notes. So I knew this had to be a super saw, obviously, so I put this up to 8 voices. And another thing that I did, which is something that I saw while trying to learn from the presets in Serum, I pushed this range up to 6 from 2. And what that does is it increases the amount of detune for every voice that you have. And what this does is it allows you to have way thicker super saws than you normally would be able to. So I also set it to super, which is just a different way of blending the voices. So that sounds like this. So by contrast, if I put this down to 2 again, it sounds very thin. So having this at 6 really makes a difference on how thick that sound is. The next thing I did was add white noise because it sounded like there's a very bright layer to Porter's version. So I put this envelope 2 on the level there so it's not constant throughout, and push the pitch a little bit. Next, what I attempted to do was create this kind of buzzy harmonic layer in the high end. I always feel like Porter's super saws have this kind of buzzy ringing character in the high end. So that's what I tried to recreate with this oscillator. It sounds like this. It's almost like a cricket kind of sound. And the way I created this was just going into the wavetable editor, just drawing in some harmonics. And then I would go down here and click next. You'll see a little plus. And I just did it again for a few different waves. And then I went to morph and crossfade. And that allows you to blend between each wave smoothly. So if I go back here, you can see that this wave is able to blend. And I put this envelope 2 on there as well, just so there's a little bit of movement. So I think it just adds a little bit of a ringing character. It's very subtle, but it helps. Okay, so next in the FX tab, I added some chorus, just for a little bit of a wider kind of spread out sound. Okay, so the last thing in this synth to note is that I went to the matrix tab and I used this velocity on the amp of the entire synth. So I put it all the way up And then what this allowed me to do is really fine tune which notes were popping out of the mix. So in the MIDI, if I expand this and bring the velocities up, you'll see that certain notes, the velocity is higher, some are lower. And what this did was allow me to really decide which notes were going to be popping out. So if I take this velocity off real fast, it sounds like this. And then if I pop that back on, it's also very subtle. It's just adding a hint of character, I think. So you'll hear that the high end is way more emphasized. Some of these middle bass notes are a little bit lower, so they're not as loud. You're kind of hearing the harmonics and feeling them, but they're not popping out too much. They're not distracting. So next I used an EQ. Porter's version had a very bright high end, so I really accentuated the high ends and kind of did a little dip around under 1K, and then a little bit of boost around 100. That's where his bass sounded like it was most present. So that sounds like this. And then I'd use some further EQ, just some mid-side EQ to kind of get it in the right space. A little bit of a boost around this like 2 to 3K region, just to get that white noise really washing out. Then I tried some stuff with a compressor, but I didn't really like the sound of it. So next is the reverb. And the reason I used a separate Serum FX for the reverb is because I wanted to place it after the EQ, so the reverb would have the right brightness and would wash out in between notes. So I also used the plate setting, which is something I saw a lot in the presets as well, using this plate with a large size, a large mix amount, kind of creating a hollow reverb with the plate setting. So that kind of completes this sound. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. Last thing is just a limiter to get it up to the right LUFS amounts. So I'm just pushing that up until I got it to around -7. Okay, so the next thing that I added was this little melody line, but 2 octaves above. It sounded like that was ringing out in Porter's version. So separately, it sounds like this. And that is the same patch as the Super Saw. It's just 2 octaves up. And then I just cut all of the lows out, if there were any. And yeah, so that combined with the Super Saw sounds like this. It's subtle, but it really does fill out that high end. So lastly, I added this little midline. It sounded like there was a little bit more of a lower character in Porter's version. So this is actually following the bass notes, but the second phrase, it sounded like it was left on a B. That may be incorrect. It might still go up to this E, but I just left it on the B. It sounded all right. So alone, that sounds like this. And that is pretty much the same patch, but I took it down to 2 voices, threw a little bit of reverb just directly on it, and then did a bit of EQ to kind of try and fit it into the right spot. So yeah, that is all 3 of those patches. And if I play them all together, we get the final result. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this. I think it's fairly close to the original sounds. I think what really helped was pushing the range up on that global tab. So the super saw could be way larger and wider and the voices could be more spread out. So yeah, I kind of just added a little bit of Porter's beat in there just to see what it would sound like. So I'll just let this play out. That'll be about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.